Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on Protect Your Company from Cyber Attacks. I'm Peter Talion, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I'll be your host. Our speakers today are Ed and Chris Cotto. More on our speaker in just a moment. This webinar is being done in collaboration with the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Monroe Library. And we are joined today by Ray Giovanni. Ray, would you like to make a few comments? First, some brief information on SCORE. We have about 230 offices nationally with 10,000 plus volunteers. We are part of the Small Business Administration. SCORE Fairfield County has 100 plus volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. Number one, we offer free one-on-one counseling, face-to-face, telephone, email, or video, which can be accessed via the Request Mentor link on our website or via the link on the screen. Educational workshops and webinars, over 100 a year, and extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal. We have converted some of our in-person workshops to live webinars due to COVID, but we are now doing some in-person workshops as well. Look for the specifics on fairfieldcounty.score.org. Some useful information about today's event. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Our webinar will end at 1 p.m. to respect your time, and we will handle questions in the last 10 minutes of our session. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next couple of days. Now for our speakers. Ed and Chris Cotto have been working in the computer industry for more than 30 years. They started Blue Ridge Systems in 2002, and they are Microsoft, Dell, HP premier partners. Having a long history with computers from break, fix, repair to design, server migrations, workstations, office wiring, MS365, SharePoint, and cybersecurity, Ed and Chris and their team are well suited to tackle any technology issue. I'm now delighted to turn it over to Ed and Chris. It's all yours. Take it away.
So folks, thank you for having us. I'm here with Chris. Actually, he's my son, and as I said before, we've been in business for a long time, and we're now focusing more on cyber attacks and how to better protect companies out there, whether large or small. We're handling everything what's coming in, and I'm going to hand this over to Chris. He can start the presentation with the slide. Chris, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Chris Cotto, and I'm here to present this webinar to you. Going over, this is the slides for the SCORE, which will come up back later at the end of the presentation. So our agenda today is going to be what is cybersecurity, go over cybercrime prevention, and then at the end we will take any questions that that are in the Q&A. So first, what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is a collection of measures and practices taken to protect computers, networks, programs, or systems from cyber attacks. These attacks can take the form of malware, denial of service, theft of data, unauthorized access, tampering of data, and any number of other malicious actions. Cybersecurity is, the big buzzword. You'll hear that insurance companies want more guarantees of cybersecurity. There are cybersecurity policies out there. It is becoming a big deal these days. The cost of cybercrime. This slide and the next one are taken from the FBI's Internet Complaint Center. The cost of cybercrime on companies and individuals has increased drastically over the last 5 years. Just to show on this chart over here, in 2017, there were roughly 301,000 complaints that they received, totaling a cost of $1.4 billion. And in 2021, as you can see, the complaints jumped up to 847,000 with a cost of over $7 billion. And to note that these are just the complaints that have been received. There are always a number of complaints that are not received. And, so these numbers are probably much higher than what you currently see. Next, we have the growth of cybercrime. So cybercrime is one of the fastest growing types of crime in the world. According to the FBI's site, the 5 largest types of crime are extortion, identity theft, personal data breaches, non-payment, non-delivery, and then you have the cybercrime of phishing, vishing, smishing, and farming, which we'll go into a little bit more detail with the next slide. But as you can see, the numbers of these crimes has increased drastically over the last 5 years. Starting in, with 2017, there were 25,000 reports, and now in 2021, almost 324,000 reports. And one of the other things is that bad actors can reside and operate anywhere in the world. So for most types of crimes, or at least the in-person ones, you have to have the bad guy in the same area as you. These bad actors can operate in any country in the world at any time, which makes it much easier for them to do the things that they do. As I said earlier, the common cyber attack definitions. One of the major ones that I'm sure most of us have heard about is phishing. And it is the fraudulent practice of sending emails purporting to be from reputable companies. So these would be password reset request emails that appear to be coming from Microsoft or whoever your email service provider is. These things, what they do is they ask you to log into a site, put in your username and password. If you do so, they then have access to your emails. Phishing is the fraudulent practice of making phone calls. So these would be the various robocalls that everybody has gotten, whether it's about a vacation package that you purchased 10 years ago, or your car's warranty being out of place, to now more often they're the Amazon type of, a certain amount of money has been placed on your Amazon account. Please call us to verify. If you call them, you start speaking with them, they maintain a dialogue, and that is how they go about trying to collect their money. I personally watched a video in which they were showing a call center that placed 500,000 robocalls in an afternoon. Of those 500,000 calls, 500 people returned the phone call. Of those 500 people, 5 people fell for the scam to the tune of $25,000 to $50,000. Smishing. This is the fraudulent practice of sending text messages purporting to be from reputable companies. We have seen a vast increase in this particular practice over the last 2 years. Once your number is out there, it is impossible to get it off of these lists. So, for instance, if you have your phone number attached to your name with a company and that list falls into a bad actor's hands, they will then sell that list off, and it will keep perpetuating, and people will send you text messages to your phone pretending to be your CEO, your CFO, or IT company. In recent months, there has been a few high-profile incidents that have gone this route. One company who does IT security had a number of employees fall for one of these smishing campaigns that allowed the bad actors to get their credentials and allowed them access into their system, causing a number of issues. The exact cost in total is yet to be determined. The last one is farming. This is the fraudulent practice of directing internet users to bogus websites that mimic the appearance of legitimate ones. Farming, smishing, and phishing, and actually all of these work hand in hand together. A lot of them, especially with the phishing campaigns, will say, click this link to go to this site, and they make it look like it's the Microsoft password reset location. But if you were to actually check the address bar, you would see that this is not the Microsoft website. But if people aren't paying attention, it is fairly easy for them to go down this rabbit hole and accidentally give up their username and passwords. Examples of large-scale attacks, and these are just a few of the many that are happening out there on a daily basis. But these are just some of the bigger ones that have targeted healthcare specifically. In May of 2017, NHS, the National Healthcare System of England, was infected with WannaCry ransomware, and it disrupted more than 80 hospitals, costing the government an estimated $90 million. This attack led to more than 19,000 appointments being canceled over a one-week period. I remember hearing about this on the news here, and I do not watch TV on a regular basis, so it was a pretty big deal. Later on, in May of 2021, Ireland's system fell victim to a ransomware attack. The country refused to pay the ransom and estimates that it can now spend up to $100 million recovering from the attack. The Irish Prime Minister is quoted saying possibly the most significant cybercrime attack on the Irish state. In August this year, NHS, the National Healthcare System of England, once again was compromised, but this time through a vendor. The target was one of their vendors called Advance, and that company provided software for various parts of the health services. It affected services including patient referrals, ambulance dispatch, out of hours, appointment bookings, so on and so forth. Reports indicate that it could be over a month before systems are fully restored. These types of attacks bog services down. They prevent people from getting the services that they need, and it takes a long time for them to get back to normal. And here's an example of a smaller attack, because while large-scale attacks are one thing, most of us are in part of this webinar are small businesses. But here's an example that I know of that could happen to a small business. A person in accounting received an email with ACH information to pay a bill from a vendor. That vendor had the letter M in its name. The person, not knowing any better, went through the process of changing the ACH information and transferred out $90,000. Everything seemed normal until about a month later, they get an email from the vendor saying that they have not received any payments. Further investigation reveals that the M was replaced with an RN. Now, in capital letters, that's pretty easy to spot, but here's what it looks like in lowercase. Now, if you take a second to look at that, and then look at it again, you'll notice that the R and N blend very well together to look like an M. So basically what happened is the person looked quickly, saw the M, as far, because your brain has a good way of skipping over things that are incorrect like that, and the money wound up being unrecoverable, and the company had to pay out an additional $90,000 to still pay their vendor for a total of $180,000 total. This was a pretty major deal for them, which wound up, having them go through more cybersecurity processes. So now that we've seen some of the effects of cybercrime, what can we do to prevent it? So the first step would be securing your hardware. Data backups and staff training. These are the three things that we're going to go into a little bit more on the following slides. So what is securing your hardware? How do you go about doing it? Well, first off, securing your hardware such as desktops, laptops, phones, and tablets is a critical step in mitigating data theft. One of the first things you should do is make sure that you have endpoint protection software, again, which we will go into more detail in the following slide. Then there is hard drive encryption. MFA, multi-factor authentication, and lastly, updates. So, endpoint protection. So endpoint protection, also known as endpoint security, is a general term that describes cybersecurity services for network endpoints like laptops, desktops, smartphones, tablets, servers, and virtual environments. These services may include antivirus, anti-malware, web filtering, and more. So it's a very broad definition for a number of services that are wrapped into one. There are many types of programs out there that can achieve this. But you might be thinking, well, why do I need endpoint protection? I'm a small business. Consider this. Criminals are constantly developing new ways to attack networks, take advantage of employee trust, and steal your data. Small businesses may think that you're not a target, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, small businesses now face the same risk of attack as an enterprise business. Going back to my earlier examples, I showed you some large-scale attacks and then an example of a small-scale attack. $90,000 is still a significant amount of money for a small business to lose to an attack. Hard drive encryption. So, hard drive encryption is a technology that encrypts the data stored on a hard drive using sophisticated mathematical functions. Data on a encrypted hard drive cannot be read by anyone who does not have access to the appropriate key or password. So how does this help? Well, laptop theft, and we've all heard these stories. I remember hearing on the news years ago, laptops from the Veterans Affairs being stolen. So a simple login password can be circumvented if the hard drive is removed and plugged into another device. Encrypting the drive prevents access to the files in the event that the drive is removed. So bad actor steals the laptop, can't get past the password that the person has to get into the laptop. They take out the drive, they put it inside another device. If it is encrypted, they still cannot access the files, rendering it useless to them. A new thing that has been becoming more prevalent these days is MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. Some of you have experienced this if you have Gmail or other email services where they send you a text or code to your device to prove that you are who you say you are. So the quick definition of it, it's a layered approach to securing data and applications where a system requires a user to present a combination of two or more credentials to verify a user's identity for login. And here's an example. This was an example that I did today. I opened up a new browser. I went to my email. I put in my credentials, and then I had this pop up. This is a request to look at my phone to approve the request. If a bad actor gets your username and password, and they're in another foreign city, or actually even just down the road from you, and they try to log in with your credentials, they will not be able to get any further than this because they do not have your phone. This helps to prevent fraud and people being able to move about your systems freely. Lastly, on this topic, updates. Updates are the one thing that a lot of people tend to hit ignore, do later, because people don't want to spend the time waiting for their computer to reboot. But hackers love security flaws, also known as software vulnerabilities. Software vulnerability is a security hole or weakness that has been found in a software, and hackers can then take advantage of this weakness by writing code to target a vulnerability. This is known as malware. Some of the more famous attacks, like the WannaCry ransomware, used a security vulnerability that had been discovered in Windows-based software, and anybody who had installed the Windows security updates was immune to that particular attack. As you saw, the healthcare system of England did not do the updates, and that is how they fell victim to that particular attack.
And I just want to add that this is probably the most important part of any computer operating system program software. This will protect you to a degree, and those who don't do it are taking the risk. If you don't think it doesn't apply to you, think again.
It probably will. So these exploits can infect your computer with no action on your part. Most of the times, if we have username and passwords, we'll get those notifications, but some of these programs can run through without triggering that. It could be from visiting a website, opening a bad email, or even playing infected media. This malware can then steal your data that's saved on your device and allow attackers to gain control over your computer. There are numerous reports of attackers gaining control over one computer, finding administrator passwords that have been left behind, and then gaining further access to systems, compromising large amounts of data, anywhere from your phone, from people's phone numbers to their credit cards,
bank statements,
and such. The next biggest thing is staff training. Your employees hold a lot of power when it comes to protecting your organization's data. Notifications by employees are the most common way businesses have discovered cyber attacks. This reveals that employees need to be trained on how to identify attacks to combat incoming threats. Developing strong information security culture can also help educate individuals on the necessary steps that they need to keep their personal and work-related devices secure. Your employees can become the first line of defense and not the organization's weakest link. No matter how good your security protocols are, if an employee still chooses to fall for that fake website, to fall for that phishing scam, that smishing scam, they wind up giving their credentials out. They can be the weakest link, but if you train them properly, they can be your strongest line of defense. The types of trainings, there are many, but we're going to focus on two of them. The first being policies and procedures, and the next being phishing campaigns. So policies and procedures. In short, these are essential to any organization. Together, these policies and procedures provide a roadmap for day-to-day operations. They hopefully ensure compliance with laws and regulations, give guidance for decision-making, and streamline internal processes. Many of the cyber policies out there, or insurance policies, require that policies and procedures be in place and for you to give them a copy of those policies and procedures. What happens a lot of times is that a policy or a procedure is created and then forgotten about, or not told to new employees. It sits somewhere in a file, never to be seen again. And then when people ask, oh, well, what is the policy for when X happens? Nobody knows. But a good policy example would be to add a banner to all emails that come in from outside the company. This prevents spoofing of your domain name when phishing scams are made to look like internal emails. So I'm sure that some of you have seen an email in which it says, warning, this email is from outside the organization. Please make sure that this is a legitimate sender. These types of things can have whitelists so that, if you have a vendor or client that you work with on a day-to-day basis, you can add that to them. And so that, you don't have to constantly keep seeing that. And it also helps prevent if that person gets their email address spoofed. Same thing as before in the slide that I showed you with that M and RN example. Had that policy been in place, they would have seen that the email address was actually different than the vendor that they were supposed to be talking to. This is just one of the many policies and procedures that could be in place. They can range from simple to extremely complex. Phishing campaigns. Now, what are these? So these are simulated attacks that you can use to test employee security awareness as part of a comprehensive awareness strategy. Reports can be generated to show which employees opened the email and how far into the simulated scam they actually went. Excuse me one second. Employees can then tailor training to the staff as needed. Examples of this are Liberty Mutual does a phishing scam every 3 months. And should you fall victim to this phishing scam, you are then directed to take additional training, which from what I have heard, most of the people there do not want to do. I myself have initiated several phishing campaigns, and it is pretty surprising on who are the people that actually do this. Sometimes it's the people with the most awareness of these things, are the ones that tend to fall for these things. But a phishing campaign can help you to see which employees are actually doing and need to be addressed. And one of the last things is data backups. So data losses can occur in many forms, from hard drive failures to ransomware attacks and even human error or physical theft. Backing up your data is the quickest and most reliable way to recover from a ransomware attack, and you will not have to pay the attackers to recover your data. One of the problems with paying the ransom is that while they say that they will give you back your data, there is no guarantee that they actually will, and no guarantee that they won't sell it off or try to attack you again. So if you are a victim of a ransomware attack, you can say, thank you, no thank you. I'm just going to restore my backups that doesn't have the ransomware, and you should be able to move forward in a better manner than trying to restore your data in some other way. And a suggestion that we definitely have is to utilize cloud backup services to be able to restore your data in the event of a disaster at your office. Backups that are done on site are great. They're quick to access and things like that. But what happens if you go to work one day and your office is not there? Or if the power is down due to a natural disaster, hurricane, tornadoes, things like that, and you can't physically access any of your data. If your data is in the cloud, you can move to another site, be it home or another office, and still be able to get access to your data. Losing data is one of the worst things that can happen to a company. And remember to test your data backup to ensure that they are running properly. There are many stories out there of companies who had backup plans in place, but when it came time to actually restore the data, they found that the backups were corrupt. There was no testing done, and so the system that they thought they had in place turned out not to be working at all. So, in conclusion, with more and more businesses being done online, with more and more business being done online, cybersecurity is more important than ever. Having malware install itself on your computer or falling for a phishing scam can lead to a bad actor getting your login credentials, which can lead to your email being hacked, customers and clients being scammed, and potential loss of company data. Email scams range from the obvious ones that are carefully and cleverly target to you and your company. I have seen one example in which a client was working with a new vendor. That vendor had their emails hacked, and they were able to time their attack to happen in concurrence when the new businesses were coming online. This prevented the client from getting an understanding of how the vendor did business, and the bad actors were able to get in and pretend to be the new vendor relatively easy. Knowing what to look for, as well as having the correct tools in place, will help to mitigate the chances of these cyber attacks becoming successful. There is no way to stop an SMS campaign, a smishing campaign going to your phone, receiving phishing emails, receiving these robocalls. The best method of preventing these attacks is people's knowledge and having the tools in place that help to mitigate these things. Unfortunately, this is the point where we would like to take any questions.
So thank you very, very much, Chris and Ed. The questions, if you could send them into the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we will take one question after another. As we build the queue for the questions, let me start off with one for our listeners. Many of the participants on this call are owners and managers of small businesses. You went through a very comprehensive presentation, Chris, so thank you. What would you say the number 1, 2, and 3 actions that someone should take after getting off this call to take a step in terms of improving their cybersecurity? What are the first 3 things that our listeners should do right after they get off this call?
Well, the first thing that I would do is to make sure that you have some sort of endpoint security on your computer. Very recently, I have had 2 separate individuals who both said the same phrase, "I thought we already had that on our computers." They, in fact, did not have any sort of endpoint protection on their computers, leaving them vulnerable. They were lucky in the fact that nothing happened. So that's a big thing. The second thing, data backups. If you have data out there, please make sure that it is being backed up. Just because someone says it's being, or a service says that they're backing it up, doesn't mean that it will actually work. Too many times we have seen where, you lose something, you lose a file that you're working on for 4 or 5 hours, or sometimes an entire day. They go to restore it and it's not there. The backup fails or something of a similar nature, causing you to spend more time trying to get back what you already did. And thirdly is to really consider what sort of training you could do to, to help you and your employees get better at detecting these kinds of attacks. Bad guys are trying all different ways to come up with new ways, utilizing old ways to try to trick people into falling for these attacks. I've seen people who are some very smart individuals fall for very easy attacks that they later go, "I don't understand how I fell for that." And the answer is that, either they weren't paying attention, they were too busy, things of that nature.
I believe, in addition, that we recently saw an attack where someone got a phone call from their cable company, and they said to them that they sensed something going on, and the fellow let them in, and they looked around, and they said, there's something going on here. Well, that was the first flag. You don't let them in, and your cable company would never call you. They might say, there's other ways of communication, but they will not call you. The other flag that was raised is that because he was helping them solve their problem, they were giving him a $400 credit, going right into their bank account. He logged into the account and he realized, well, first of all, he gave him his bank account number, and they deposited what was really $2,400. And the guy said, "Oops, I made a mistake. I need you to send me $2,000 back." This is a smart guy, educated, but it was too good to be true. Then the light bulb went on and he hung up on him. He called me and says, "What did I just do?" Well, if you think about what happened to this fella, it happened to any one of us. They're not going to call you, they call you. They're going to give you money, which is pretty much another red flag, and you're letting them into your computer. Once you do that, they're inside. These guys are that crafty, and they know how to pick on you. They say that most folks that get taken are the elderly. Well, that's far from the truth. Some folks who just want to talk to someone are the ones that become victims of themselves, because they allow this to happen. And unfortunately, a lot of the elderly are home alone and they need that attention, so they'll comply. And what happens next is what happens next. So we always stress, kindly hang up on them, and please don't let them into your computer, because once they're in, who knows what happens after that. And if they're going to give you something, it's probably not, it's probably a scam. So the old saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Very good. We've got lots of questions in the queue, so thank you, participants, and keep sending them in. We'll take them one after another. The first question for you, Chris and Ed: recommendations on the best low-cost software to protect an entrepreneur. Best low-cost software that you recommend.
I mean, the type of software that we use personally for our clients for the endpoint security is called WebRoot. It differs from a lot of your more traditional antivirus software in that the traditional ones, when they install themselves, they have a library of the different types of attacks that exist. And this library is updated constantly throughout the day, once, twice, 3 or 4 times. The issue with that is that if a new attack comes out, you are technically vulnerable to it until that library is updated. The way that WebRoot works is that it utilizes the cloud, the power of the cloud. Every time something happens on your computer that it deems suspicious in the slightest, it will take a snapshot of your computer. It will then go out and ask the cloud, what is this? Is it bad? Should I do anything about it? If everything checks out, nothing happens. If something is detected, then it will revert your computer back to the state prior to that happening. So we have found that this software works very well. It is sometimes a little too aggressive, but there are ways to, whitelist stuff so that you can do what you need to do.
Okay. And the name of this software is WebRoot, WEBROOT?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, very good. Our next question is, should you have designated internal staff or an external company to provide cybersecurity?
So depending on the size of your company, if you have the correct amount of people there, having one person designated who actually is knowledgeable in this field could be a good thing to have. But most of us are so busy with our jobs that to try to give that responsibility to somebody else internally, having them do their normal job and then that can lead to problems. Having an outside dedicated IT vendor or a network consultant who is dedicated to that particular field, I personally feel is sometimes a better way to go. They can come in, they can learn your system. They are constantly immersed in the day-to-days of the IT world and anything new that comes along.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, are there types of companies that can serve as a kind of intermediary or a moat between a small business and the online battlefield?
Well, yes, as I mentioned, IT consultants such as us do that for our clients. We inform the clients of some of the issues that are going on. We are constantly made aware of the changes that are coming up and responding to threats as necessary. Again, one of the reasons why I recommend, utilizing an IT consulting company, because that is their job, is to do that.
And in addition, if there's a attack out there, we can send an email to the office manager or the reception to inform the staff that this is something that's abnormal. It looks real, but it isn't, and to be aware of it. So we do get alerts from our partners on the cloud, Microsoft, Dell, HP, and so on. And they make us aware of things that are happening before you, the user, even know about this. So we get the alerts early. We then email those who need to know to pass along to the staff members, alerting them that this is out there now, and please be aware of it. So if you get this type of email that's just some type of a phishing scam, please let us know so we can block them or put them in or take remove that email, and also alerting them to better educate them and make them better prepared, because every day something different happens, and who's gonna tell you it's happening? Unless you're doing it every day, you're hoping that it doesn't happen.
Okay, you talked about IT service companies. Could you give us 3 questions that one of our listeners should ask an IT company or an IT consultant to make sure that they're getting someone that is knowledgeable and trustworthy?
One of the first questions would be, how long has their staff been in the field? Because in today's age, it's very easy to Google an answer. But you don't want that to be the primary way that a company does business. Those who have been in the field a long time, there are certain patterns to the way the IT world works. A problem that exists that I may have come across, a year or two ago, comes up in a similar fashion. I have seen it before. I can help remedy the situation much faster. Another question for them is, what partners, what vendors do they use? Do they have, the ability to recommend, or do they have software that they recommend to all of their clients? For us, you asked earlier about which type of endpoint software, do we recommend? And the software that we recommend is the same type of software that we use at all of our clients. So it's tested, we know that it's reliable, and we know how to deal with any issues that can arise from it.
The other question is obviously referrals. That's the biggest thing, because like Chris said, and these days it's so easy to get certified. Anyone can get a piece of paper, but when you're what we call, battleground tested, that's where the true worth comes in, and that individual or company has to stand behind what they do. What you don't want to have is someone yesing you and not being totally honest with you, because sometimes you can't do that, or it's not allowed, or you say it's better done on the weekend. So if someone says we can do it at any time, it's probably not always true. I mean, we see it every day. Kind of what we do is, whether it's day, night, weekend, we're available, because that's we have to work around someone's schedule, not have companies working on our schedules. So
and getting referrals from not so much referrals, but testimonials from clients that they already have can help validate what you're being told.
Okay, very good. Let's go on to our next question. Macs don't typically have antivirus outside of staying up to date with their software updates. Are there any other ways to mitigate an attack on a Mac Apple computer?
Macs do got software. They have Macs.
Yeah, so there is antivirus software for Macs out there. I know that Macs generally are protected by their own operating system. They do have built-in software, much like Microsoft, like Windows does as well. Although we all know that Microsoft is constantly being attacked because it is the dominant software out there. But in terms of Macs, keeping it up to date, still, following the same basic procedures that you would even if you had a Windows-based machine will help prevent someone from getting access to a Mac. What's the word? The general idea out there is that Macs are invulnerable to viruses, and the truth is that they're not. They are susceptible to these things. It's a lot harder for those systems to be attacked, but I always tell people, if you were a bad guy and you wanted to infect as many computers as you possibly can, would you go after the operating system that the majority of businesses use, or the operating system that more home users use?
But also the other thing is the latest Mac OS was released to avoid a potential, what they call a leak. And anyone had a Macintosh or an Apple was told to update that right away. I believe it was a couple of months ago. I was in Florida working on something, and that came up, and we updated it right away. And that stopped something from potentially happening. So when Apple tells you to do something, you do it, as well as Microsoft. And we go back, we say updates. Every manufacturer has to update their machines. There was a time when Apple, you would hardly ever hear that they were infected. Well, that's not true today. They're a big player now. They've got a bigger share of the market. The more popular you get, the more of a target you are. To me, it's a bragging right for these guys. So if someone could say that they attacked something that's not going to be attackable, that tag name that they use, I'm guessing, he gets credit or she gets credit or they get credit. So it goes back to keeping your equipment updated, which is the number one thing that a lot of folks don't do. But here's another one that we haven't mentioned yet, is if you can install software on your computers without being asked, is this what you're trying to do? Then you are probably 99% of the problem for home users, even small businesses. What we always recommend, you should not be the administrator of your equipment. You should have something say that, are you the one doing this? If you say no, then the software doesn't start. If you are an administrator of your machine, and what I mean by that is if you turn your machine on and use a load software without being prompted, you're your own victim. You need to set yourself up where if you install something on your computer, laptop, whatever it is, you should be asked first, is this what you're trying to do? And if the answer is yes, you do it. The answer is no, you don't do it. And if the answer is no, and you're not doing it, guess what's going on? Someone is trying to install something that you have no idea what it is, and you shouldn't allow that to happen.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, should we report cyber attacks to the FBI or other government entity? What should you do if you are a victim of cyber attack in terms of reporting?
Reporting, if you are a victim of cybercrime, then you should report this, because the FBI and law enforcement agencies in recent years have been taking this stuff very seriously. Even countries around the world have been taking it more and more serious. I know specifically in India, where a lot of attacks have come from, the government over there is starting to crack down more and more on these individuals and groups that are doing this. If the crime isn't reported, then no one knows to actually do anything about it.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, some people I know often reply to a text with a humorous visual graphic, like, for example, a looped video clip. Do these things pose any hacking risk to the user's phone?
That depends largely on the phone and the type of person, and who you're contacting with. Like, if I receive a random text from somebody and I reply to them, then I've started a dialogue. I have personally, seen some where they say, "Hi, is this so-and-so?" And you say, "No, I'm sorry, I have the wrong number." And they go, "Oh, okay, thank you. You're so nice. It'd be nice to meet. It'd be nice to keep talking with you." And they start a dialogue that way, and they eventually get into scamming you somehow. In terms of the gifts themselves, I'm not aware of that being a potential issue, but that's not to say that it wouldn't be in the future, or that somebody might not find a way to do that.
Okay.
I've actually seen some on my end. I've seen a couple, and again, we go back to what there's an uptick on text messaging, which is how they're now targeting you. This is a big deal. We've seen and heard complaints where someone goes, "My boss sent me a text message. How did he get my text message?" And we say, "You know what? We don't know. We don't know what algorithm that they're using." But like Chris said, if you're out there, if you're on the social media, LinkedIn is one of them. If your information is out there, it's out there. If someone gets it, they can actually send you a text message from someone on your work team. And in this case, what Chris said earlier, there was an attack on a company via a text message that this individual had to change their password, and he did it. Him and a few other folks. And this is a cloud-based company, and they got in and they stole the data. And now their clients started getting the same text messages. So no one knew about this for several weeks. What actually happened at that? Well, they're not saying. But we do know that texting is becoming probably going to be the number one way to try to get you to do something. and to get into your machine. Because as you know, we bank through our phones, we video through our phones. So it's becoming part of us. So it's becoming more what I call mainstream, and going to get worse before they figure out another avenue. Because once it gets old, they'll move on to something else. But right now, you're more likely to be targeted via a text message. And that's the way things are going. And you need to be vigilant. We use the word vigilant very loudly. If you're not vigilant, you might be a victim.
Okay, our next question is, I do regular annual factory resets on my devices. Does this help?
That's a new one. Factory resets, they bring your computer back to a state in which it was when it first left the factory, which then will force you would then have to do all the updates all over again. So the factory reset would remove anything that's on the computer, but then you have to go through the process of updating everything all over again. So that's a very interesting question there, and something that
I personally wouldn't go back to the beginning. I would say that if you've done all the updates, your phone or your tech, whatever you have, will be up to date. The only way I would do something that would be effective default is that device had a problem, and by me bringing it back to day one means I'm starting over again. I wouldn't do something start over again. If everything's working, I will continue doing the updates that the manufacturer recommends that they've identified potential issues to keep the equipment up to date and running, and avoiding any potential attacks.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, do you recommend password generator apps that store all of your passwords in one place securely?
If that generator is actually secure, then that could be a good way to go. I know a lot of companies are looking for that, because you have passwords, you have 20 different passwords for 20 different sites. How do you keep those together? I know, for instance, Google can keep a record of all your passwords for various websites. And that is as secure as your Google password is, because if a bad guy gets your password to that, then they can go in and see your stuff. So on one hand, they are good, but you do have to be careful, because not keeping all your eggs in one basket. So that there are pros and cons to that.
And by the way, the company that got compromised on the cloud had offered that same service. So it's a loaded question that there's no answer, because if that company who's housing that information can get compromised, what happens to all your information? So you really got to be careful, and not saying that the pen and paper is the best way to do things, but there are. I did read something that there was this new product that's coming out that it's like a little thing that flashes on your hand, and that's the best way to keep it. It's a new product that I've been looking at, that it's supposed to be more bulletproof than what they claim that's out there. But again, you have to be careful, because when I read that this company that got offered the same services, they house all your passwords, they got compromised. So what does that tell anybody?
Understood. So talking about along those lines, are there operating systems that are less well known and perhaps less likely to be hacked?
So there are operating systems out there, but the main thing is the third-party software. So your business uses QuickBooks or some other sort of accounting service, a legal service. Those programs are written for specific operating systems. So one type of operating system out there that people like to use, that they say is more secure, is Linux. Linux is fine, but it's vastly different than the iOS or Windows. And if your program is written for Windows or the Mac OS systems, and it's not written for Linux, then you won't be able to use it on that system. which would be detrimental to what you're trying to achieve.
But and it's also an open source operating system, which means that anyone can make changes. It's not locked down. If you know anything that's what's called open source, you can make changes to customize it to what your needs are, but not necessarily the best thing for you. So the ones that are out there now, obviously is Windows 11, which has been secured, and Mac iOS. With their new updates, they're supposed to be, they're tightening them down a little more. I don't know to what degree, because there are always changes coming abroad. But the different operating systems, like Chris said, you know, depending on what your business uses, can or may not work with your type of business.
Okay, and we'll close with one last question. If you've been phished or vished or smished, are there any legal recourse that you can take?
Aside from reporting it, these guys are very good at covering their tracks. You know, if you don't report the crime, then nothing will happen. But they do have cyber insurances out there that could help you reclaim your money. They will do investigations, but you know, it's like, you know, you send money in the mail and somebody picks it up. Are they going to catch that person? They're getting better at it, but it is still an ever evolving field.
And cyber insurance, we just got an email this morning. We're part of a questionnaire helping another company out on what is it that they're asking. So more and more companies are buying it and not having the right things in place to be compliant with the policy before they even be considered that they can buy it. They have to be compliant. So having the insurance is obviously is going to be a must. Depending on what kind of business you do on the internet, it's going to affect how much you're going to get. But that's one of the questions that, you know, we say talk to your insurance carrier and see what he or she could do for you, because it's becoming more of a conversation with it. We're involved in a lot of conversations. They say, am I compliant? We don't know who they, you know, and this is just a question that, and they're not our clients, by the way. They're not our clients. They're just people that were given to us. Say, can you help this person out? Because they don't know. So we get involved, and we want, and it's a free service because we want to, you know, introduce ourselves, obviously, but we want to make sure that, you know, that we stay on top of our game by helping someone else out and then having them share the knowledge, which is what this is about.
Well, very good. On that note, thank you very, very much, Chris and Ed. We all learned a lot from you today. I would like to thank the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Monroe Library in supporting this webinar with SCORE. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and the materials will be available within a couple of days on the SCORE website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. Please check our website for upcoming webinars. And again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. We are available for sessions via phone, email, or video. We also take the evaluations that will be sent to you very seriously and customize our webinars in response to your feedback. And on behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank all of you for attending. And Ed and Chris, thank you very much for putting in the time and effort. And we wish everybody a super day. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you again for having us.